again, everybody. Lovely to see you all again. I hope you all enjoyed afternoon tea and are refreshed for our final session of the day, which is another of our panel discussions. So you might recall from yesterday, the aims of our panel discussions are to help us synthesise different ideas that were raised during each of the 3 sessions of the day, and also for us to share diverse perspectives and use that to start new knowledge and build new partnerships. So the topic of our panel of the day is From Global to Local, Strategies for Coordinating Actions for Reef Protection Across Space and Time. Dr. Ian Poiner, the Chair of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, will be the facilitator for this session. So over to you, Ian. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. And thanks, everybody, for coming to this last session of the day, but a really important session where we give this opportunity both to think about what we've heard about today, but also raise some questions with a marvellous panel I'll introduce in a moment. But I was asked firstly to give a bit of some of my reflections from the day, and I think, you know, the things that I came here, what I heard sitting through, you know, sessions jumping around a bit, obviously didn't hear all the talks, but you know, I think the first thing that we all got to, you know, the Great Barrier Reef is a beautiful place and a wonderful place, and I think but it's also one of the best managed and understood ecosystems in the world. I think we need to be aware of that. We also, what I heard and from many places today, it's an incredibly complex place. It's complex from its geography, it's complex from its biology, its ecology, its cultural significance, its social, its industries, and all the other users of the reef. It's and we all know, as we know what's going on there with the current mass bleaching, is that the threats associated with climate change has and continues to impact the world's coral reefs, including our reef, and those impacts are continuing. And so, you know, that just we need to always remember and highlight that, you know, we need the strongest and fastest actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and also to limit ocean warming and atmospheric warming, and that's really a continuing requirement from us, and that's a global and a national issue for us all. But also that situation highlights, and what we've heard a lot today, is the need to continue and to enhance resilience-based management, including you know, novel interventions, and that's to support the health and the resilience of the Great Barrier Reef. I think there's you know, an unquestioned and shared vision around this room about the need to try and ensure the health and the long-term resilience of the reef. And I think, you know, Bill, getting back to what our theme this afternoon is, that I think in Anna Perez's talk earlier this afternoon, you know, Anna made the comment that Australia, or we at the Great Barrier Reef, in a really privileged position, and that's very true. It's a privileged position, and why we're in that position is because of the many initiatives historically and currently, you know, from our reef managers, our researchers, our traditional owners, our industries, our communities, and all those others involved in the reef, and some wonderful partnerships across those different sectors. And so, you know, and I think that's raises the question then about how we use that knowledge and share that knowledge, but further than that, how we learn from other places too. The other thing I heard today was realistic hope, and I think we need to have realistic hope. But what I'd add to that too is, I think, given all these initiatives and given some of the, you know, the competing, we're naturally in some competitive environments here, is that we need integrity and honesty around what we're doing and what it's likely to achieve. So with that, this marvellous panel here, we've got, no particular order, we've got Selina Stead, the new, relatively new now, CEO of AIM. So I'm sure you've had lots of welcomes to Australia, but another one this afternoon, Selina, and thank you for joining us. We've got from Fiji, Austin Bowden-Kirby, who's the Director of the Corals for Conservation, Fiji. I sat through Austin's talk this afternoon, very entertaining, informative and intriguing. We've got Theresa Fyffe, the Executive Director of Projects and Partnerships from the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, and and Gareth Phillips, the well-known and director of the, CEO, sorry, not a director, I'm the CEO of the Association of Marine Park Tourism Operators. So it's a really good, diverse panel. I'll just invite each of them to say a sentence or two about what you heard today. Start with you.
You sure you want to start with me? Because those who know me know I could take all the time.
But I can take it back from you.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to sit on this panel. My takeaway from not only today but yesterday is the amount of work that's actually being done here on the Great Barrier Reef is mind-blowing. I talk about it all the time, and when I talk to school groups and other hats I wear, you try and give the public the reassurance of how much work and diversity of work is being done, but you don't really understand it until you come to a symposium like this and you see and hear what's actually happening, and not only about the amount of work that's being done, the variety of what's being done. I know sometimes we always talk about coral a lot, but there's more to the Great Barrier Reef than coral, and it's just amazing the range of work that's been done across all different fields. So for me to sum up today particularly is multidisciplinary and collaborations or partnership. I remember coming into marine science as a young man, going, to become a marine biologist, you had to know fish and corals and dolphins. It was almost like one-dimensional. It's now a multi-dimensional, multidisciplinary approach to managing ecosystems like the Great Barrier Reef. It's so special, and seeing what's happening in this room and therefore across the reef is just totally inspiring. So for me, the take-home is multidisciplinary and collaboration, and we're seeing that displayed in the symposium over this week, and I can tell you I'm in awe and humbled.
Thanks, and it is great to be on the panel this afternoon. I think definitely continuing that vein of collaboration. It didn't matter what session that I was in, whether it was talking about how do we get more finance, that really talked about we need collaboration to build the project pipelines to get the investment that's needed to scale, whether we were actually talking about local stewardship. One of the key themes that came through with collaboration was ensuring, and I think this was fairly consistent, that collaborations were not just of the same types of people. And so how are we centering traditional owners and local communities in the work that we do? How are we actually engaging some of the know-how and insights from the corporate sector? So how are we actually really incubating innovation in a way that's bringing all of the different players to the table? And I think the other really big thing for me, and it was just the wow. I mean, I'm fairly close to a lot of the things that are happening, but I got to say, even for me, just to be sitting here today, and I was quite exhausted, like just thinking about what you're all doing, because it's huge, and that in itself needs to continue and needs to be communicated. And how do we get and amplify the messaging out there, because it's what's going to continue to drive and fuel hope. So I think they were the key things that I took away.
Thank you. And just before I give a summary, I just wanted to actually say a huge, massive thank you to the organisers. I've been to a lot of different conferences and workshops, but this has to be one of the most eclectic mix of people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different sectors. So, it's really a massive well done to the organisers and for all of you for coming and engaging so well. But for me, the take-home messages, I've really been blown away by the amount of empirical data. And by empirical data, it comes in different forms, whether that's been some of the social perceptions, talking what makes a good partnership. I've been really struck by people trying to evaluate, trying to answer that question of, what is effective partnership working? Where is the evidence to support what you need to do? And I really see the data, whether that's on individual species, individual habitats, if it's at a local scale, a community, a regional, a national, global, looking at different parts of the world. For me, the take-home messages have been, it's about knowledge equity, and I say equity rather than equality, because it's really about, if we're going to have, be able to make the actions at pace, you have got to be willing to have that inclusive collaboration, that openness of sharing of data. And I think one of the final take-home messages is what came out really clear in a number of talks to me, is that seeing is believing. You really need to be able to demonstrate. If you want to sustain engagement in these programs and at a speed that we really do need to make things happen now, and to make sure that we get that visibility of why there is the urgency for the action on the Great Barrier Reef, I just, again, applaud all the talks, all the presenters, everybody that's here. But again, my big plea when my opening statement was about implementation is difficult and expensive. But if you've got inclusive collaboration and people are open and they're transparent and they trust, I really do believe that you can make that difference at scale that is required. So those were my main take-home messages.
Yeah, I would like to thank whatever organization paid my way here from Fiji. Thank you. I don't even know who did, but seriously. But my take-home message is that I feel so hopeful, because I was here in 2018 at that meeting, and you have learned so much. You have learned to collaborate, and you've learned so much, and I feel that you're like building a fire of truth, a fire of power here. We can feel it in the Pacific, but we're so cold. We don't have the warmth of this amazing capacity that you have here. So, and the rumor that you're coming our way has been the best thing I've heard. We feel so lonely and isolated, and to come here, it's been like a thirsty, dried-up raisin turning into a grape. You know, it's a sultana, you call it here, right? Seriously, the people that I've met are so precious. Seriously, you don't know how precious you are. Seriously, amazing things are happening. So I feel more hope than ever. It's realistic, though, because I work on the forefront of coral reef collapse in Kiribati, where they've had 27-degree heating weeks 1 year, and another one 20, another one 25, another one 18, another one 20, year after year after year. And mostly the corals are extinct now. They're locally extinct, many species on these atolls. And I came here with the vision of depression, thinking, oh my God. But also I came here to try to share with you the vision of what we can learn there. And if you reach out there on the forefront of the collapse, you will learn lessons that can help your reefs to survive into the future. And this regional approach is absolutely essential for your survival, okay? And we need to form an army of light against these forces of darkness called climate change. And an army has a strategy. They have generals, they have sergeants, they have troops. And the indigenous people of Australia will be your troops, along with the tourism industry, along with kids in the schools. And I saw that hope because I see it happening. And so I have hope because I have you. So, as you know, coral reefs are the first ecosystem that is collapsing in the face of climate change. This is the first system, and we are on the leading edge of the movement to save these reefs. If we can save coral reefs, we can save this world. And if we fail, we're not going to save this world. So you are the most important people in the world.
Thank you, Edmund. Though sorry, thank you, Austin. Although my only comment, be careful what you wish for if we're coming, you know. But no, but I think that raises a really interesting, before we open it up to general questions, both here in the room and on those tuning in remotely. I guess, we've heard a lot about the very positive comments there, and it's a wonderful sort of feeling around the room here and in this meeting, but these meetings don't happen that often, and I think there is still some gaps in terms of how we engage with each other, and certainly some significant gaps in how we engage internationally. And when in engagement internationally, Austin, I think your point there, and I think it's a really clear point, is that it's a two-way process. We learn as much as you learn from us. I mean, that was very clear in the Coral Reef, Pacific Coral Reef Initiative meetings held here, when was it, last year? So I guess, we've heard all the good things. So I'd be interested in the panel's perspective. If you could do one thing in terms of improving our abilities to coordinate actions, and I think improve our abilities to drive what I'd call knowledge into actual management or change, what do you think you'd do?
Me. Do I have to go first? If I had one thing, and the things I don't have one thing, because you only give me one, probably what I'd say is that in Australia we have very high standards of how we operate, particularly out at sea, and that needs to be applauded. But often that comes with legislative and standards that make it quite hard to be, and I'm going to steal a word, Jane, he's going to know who I stole the word from. It makes it hard for us to be nimble, to do those quick responses to putting things on the ground. So having a legislative framework or regulations in place that drive and enable us to have that ability to be adaptable and respond quickly based on, and again, I'm going to use, I like your empirical and evidence-based data to respond to the environment, because we all want to do stuff, and talking to a lot of people, I hear that we want to do that, but this, you've got to get over this, you've got to get over that, and quite often it's in that kind of legislative framework kind of space. So make that more adaptable.
I think it's very much about momentum and how important momentum is, and we all come together around these sort of events, and we are privileged both in terms of the investment that comes into the reef, but also just being able to come together in these sorts of forums and share. So how do we keep this momentum going, but also conscious that there's been a lot of conversations about funding ebbs and flows, and where we sit right now with coral reefs on that precipice, on that tipping point, we need to be able to have the maintenance of that funding into the longer term. That is what is going to have the greatest impact in terms of maintaining the momentum. If we have to stop and restart and stop and restart. And so I think there's the two levels. There's the funding piece, but there's also very much just that amplification of what it feels like to be here. How do we let everybody know that this is what the most amazing minds around coral reefs are achieving? How do we communicate that, and how do we give the general public the tools to go out and actually play a role in saying this work has to continue, we need to do more? So I think that amplification of messaging and the maintenance of the funding, easy, right?
For me, I would say improve open access to data, or when I say data, I'm talking about information, knowledge, and I think in particular my colleague Bob Muir, who opened with his presentation, couldn't have explained or showed the importance of capturing the historical data as well, so that we can learn from previous examples of many, many years passed on knowledge. But I can't emphasize enough that we have to find better ways to share, make it openly accessible, and to make sure that we can share that information quickly. I think especially given where we are just now with the coral bleaching event, it is speed as well as access to data.
I think that what we need is we're having this intellectual property, or what is it called when you have the indigenous knowledge, where you recognize when you take the information down, you write the people's name down, you give them credit for it. I think we've got to the point where we have to reinvent the academic world so that we have to share things faster than a paper can be published. We have to be able to trust each other. The foundation of every relationship is trust, trustworthiness. And I'm trusting you guys with my heart. You see that. Okay, seriously, I want to have a system invented whereby researchers from around the world can give their best ideas and hypotheses right there in the open at an early stage, and then their names on it. So that we would be a big rush to get the best ideas in the world into this database. These are the ideas, and these are the people who had, I mean, a lot of us have the same ideas. So first one, and then the other person can ratify that. Yeah, I've been thinking about this, and I have a graph to share on that data, or whatever. A way of accelerating the exchange of knowledge based upon this trust that we have. You're developing the system with the indigenous people. Well, it should be also the non-indigenous people should fall in the same category. I'm throwing ideas around all the time. And I've had people publish papers on them, and they never notice me. But I don't care. But other people do care. So if we could have that trust based upon a system whereby sharing is more, and it might be something you can think of. We can think of a better way of sharing really key things. So what my key thing to share here this time, and I gave away a lot of knowledge because I want you to have it. And whether you cite me or not, I don't care. Because the world has to be saved by saving the coral reefs. So the one thing I have shared that's the most important, that if you don't identify your most resilient corals in the hot pockets, I know you're doing the breeding and that's good, but the hot pockets, the entire holobiont is there. The coral, the bacteria, the algae, whatever we don't even know is there in the hot pockets. And this is a time for removing those, translocating them locally 5 or 10 kilometers into cooler waters so that you preserve them. So that's the most important thing I offered as my gift to you. Please don't keep planting corals that they're not going to make it, okay? And so what I've learned all over the world, and some of us have had the same problem, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. So once you collect them, you divide them, you put them, far enough apart from each other so if one nursery dies, they're still there. So anyway, I'm just talking too long.
Thanks, Austin. I think now we've got about 20 minutes now, so now it's your opportunity. It's opportunity to both in the room and online to raise any questions you'd like or points you'd like to make to the panel. Who's first? And I assume somebody will tell me if there's something on the Slido. Yes.
Waiting for someone to make their way down to the front.
George, you're making it hard for us, you know. There we go. Ever reliable.
Thank you, Carl.
When I'm outside, you fellas are all talking. But I suppose my question is, and it's a question that's I can see has been raised for the last couple of days, like traditional owner aspirations have been around for a long time in terms of most of the time when we go and talk to traditional owners, they'll tell us what they want in terms of protection for sea country. So I suppose my question is, how do we turn those aspirations into getting TOs at the table and making some of them decisions along with you guys?
I'm happy to have a first crack at that if you like. I think it's it's a really important question, and I think it's a rather complex question. It shouldn't be, but it is. Now, I know from the Reef Authority's perspective, I think the initiatives, I think one of the really fundamental initiatives is the TUMRA programs, and those TUMRA programs started as a focus on traditional hunting, but have become much more than that. Now we have about 45% of the coastline. There's 10 or 11 TUMRA groups, and not only does it provide an opportunity for traditional owners to do things like sea country mapping, sea country engagement, all those appropriate things, but also provides the opportunity, a governance arrangement in there that allows those groups to, and they have to broaden their perspective way beyond, say, just a reef authority perspective, and many groups are doing that, and they will continue to do that. I think the parallel process, well, not a parallel, quite different process, but incredibly important process of the Reef 2050 Traditional Owner Implementation Plan, which has been reasonably well supported, will also, it'll take a couple of years, but also provide a much better way for TOs to take their rightful role in this, and I think that's also happening. And then within organisations like ours and elsewhere, there's a number of initiatives. So we are striving towards, a co-management arrangements. Now, that's a word that's easy to say. It's a bit like a lot of things in Australia, where what I like to, we're strategy and plan rich, implementation poor, because sometimes those implementation processes are tough. But again, I think there's a step forward there and striving towards that. And there's a lot of other activities in terms of engaging, appropriate engagement of TOs in issues of be it management, be it policy or whatever. Now that is happening. It needs to happen a lot more. I think and it needs to be driven as much from the TOs as from anyone else, so it can't be you will do it this way. It's got to be taking advice of how to do it. And I think there are genuine attempts to do that at the moment, but and compared to where we were, say, 20 years ago, where I know I spent a lot of times in Torres Strait and Torres Strait communities, and it was a wonderful time of great friendships, great engagement, but complete naivety around Torres Strait Islander perceptions, and I think so. We have come a long way, but and I think that we have some reasonable foundations to go forward, but I think we've got a lot further to go.
Just looking at Bob, is it okay if I'm just going to talk about the governance under the Reef Trust Partnership? I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but when the Reef Trust Partnership came to fruition, there was a negotiation very early on from traditional owners who allocated, of the $443 million of that grant, there was a $12 million allocation to traditional owner-led reef protection, and we had a delegation of traditional owners come and visit us at the Great Barrier Reef Foundation and said, given the rights and interests that traditional owners have over more than a third of land and sea country alongside the Great Barrier Reef, that amount should be much greater. And so an amount was negotiated of $52 million specifically for traditional owner-led reef protection efforts. And under that then was an independent traditional owner governance model that was established. So each of the different areas within that program, crown of thorns starfish management, integrated monitoring and reporting, reef restoration, healthy water, a traditional owner technical working group was established through an open process. And actually the 20 members of that governance have then supported the co-design working with traditional owners up and down the Great Barrier Reef. So again, it's only an example, and that kind of, I guess, needs to be scaled at a much bigger level, but that has very much put traditional owners into that driver's seat and the decision-making roles around that allocation of those funds, and what are the priorities that matter to traditional owners, and how to kind of empower and realise those aspirations that you mentioned.
Thank you. We have another question from the floor as well. So, but I'll
just do it. Can we?
Yeah, sure.
If I can just expand, it's a really great question, Carl. The short answer is I think AIMS needs to run more of those Indigenous partnership workshops, like we did on Monday. That was fantastic. But again, I come back to that point that to get trust, you have to get respect. Respect is not automatic. You have to earn that respect. And so I think starting with the truth-telling, building a relationship with traditional owners, but I think also you have to have those conversations about what are the shared values, what are the shared goals, because it takes time. to understand those. And if you don't get that, it doesn't matter which country I've worked in, perceptions influence attitudes and they influence behaviour. And so it's absolutely critical that you get those early stages and that relationship building right at the start.
Yeah, Selina, you basically said what I was going to say, because I've been doing that over the last 8 to 6 months, is travelling up and down the coast of the Great Barrier Reef as the marine tourism representative, and getting to know the different traditional owners, because, as you say, it's the perceptions or misinformation from what we see or from what traditional owners see. So it's about sitting down with the traditional owners and going, this is who we are, and also being guided by traditional owner mentors that I've included in what I do, who helps me. I'll call them and go, listen, I'm going down to speak to so and so, how to approach it. So it's coming from that level of respect and understanding, and then through those opportunities, that sharing of information, respect, gets people at the table. And I had examples of conversations today where I was talking to a group of traditional owners, and just in the share of ideas, understanding what they wanted and what I knew, it already sparked some information between the two of us in the conversation. And I think that's the important bit. So it's just voicing what you said. It's building that relationship, and those take time. From our perspective, it's often quite tricky. The marine tourism industry is looked, and particularly AMTO is looked at as a large organisation. It's actually only just me. So so one of the challenges in building those relationships is regular contact to show being genuine about the relationship, and those are some of the challenges that I see as I continue my the traditional owner engagement for the tourism industry. Is how do I maintain that and allocate my time to doing that? So these are challenges we keep doing, but it is about that relationship and trust. So you have that understanding from what we can do and what traditional aspirations are, and then that way you have stronger outcomes for both, and everyone's at the table.
Thank you. We've got the question from Slido. Oh.
Yeah, good afternoon, gentlemen. First, I acknowledge the traditional owners of Cairns, Gimwe, the traditional name. I'm from Torres Strait. I'm a traditional owner member on the RIMREP working group for GBR. Nice to meet you, and I saw your name there as the chair, so I thought I'd take this opportunity. More of a comment, really. Watching all the presentations over the last few days, it all goes up to the Cape, but the Torres Strait, if you take that line away, that's humanly made, the Great Barrier Reef actually is a part of Torres Strait, and probably beyond Papua New Guinea. So, I take the comment, if we're going to save the world, we need to protect the reef. So we consider ourselves to be a marine species, of Torres Strait traditional owners. That's our economic base, and I would like to, seek your support to, push all the beautiful work that we do into the Torres Strait, so that you've got a full set of data instead of just up to the Cape. And I think if we're going to have an outcome in the time frame that I hear everyone talking about, and I think we need to get up there and work. I mean, Torres Strait's open for business. We with the effects of climate change and all of that sort of stuff, and I think we've got an environmental land and sea program up there, and I think there needs to be, we talk about collaboration and integration, and I think that really needs to happen. And I think looking at all the M's behind all the dollar signs and all the figures, I think there's that it really needs to get up there, and I just wanted to put that on the floor. If we have international brother here, then I think it should be there. Thank you.
Okay, I really do think that the Torres Strait Islands would be the best jumping off point to work in the Pacific, because they are Pacific people. And the people of Milne Bay Province in Papua New Guinea, they have a language, it's understandable between the two, apparently. That's what I've heard. So use the Torres Strait as a bridge. And really, seriously, there's this wonderful offer by a traditional custodian. They want more work from you guys to extend up. Now, I heard the story that it's when you formed the Great Barrier Reef 30 years ago. Was it 30 years ago? More than 30? 40, 50? 49, almost 50. Okay, when the government was establishing the Great Barrier Reef, which is great, the marine park, but the Torres Strait leaders said, they're trying to take over our resources, and they rebelled, and they got government to give it to them. And this was a major change in the indigenous people giving the rights to those waters. Okay, by the Torres Strait Islanders standing up and saying, no, we don't want the government to control our waters. Now they're asking you to come there, but not to control them, okay? But by doing that, it caused a change in all of the native rights of Australia. The Torres Strait Islanders should be applauded for being the first, well, one of the first groups to stand up and actually win.
I think you're referring to the Mabo.
Yeah. Am I right on the history?
Sort of. But I don't think we have the time here to go into. There's a few minor issues like international boundaries and other things, but I think the more substantive point is that Torres Strait is part of the Great Barrier Reef. Torres Strait is a place that needs to be included in this work. Also, having worked a lot in Torres Strait myself in the past, there's a lot. It's one of these disconnects. There's a lot of research that was done in Torres Strait that can inform back into the GBR too. So I think it's a really great opportunity, and thanks for the intervention and thank you for the offer. But we have a Slido question.
Yeah, I think Bob has a question or a comment, and also Phil. Yeah.
You're on Slido.
And we've got 6 or so minutes, team. So.
Yep.
Okay, 1, 2, testing. Yep. I suppose for me, there's some really good things that are happening with engagement with traditional owners, and I'd like to acknowledge that between the RAP program and all the powers to be and the foundation, it actually has empowered the Indigenous people in a very special way. I know it's all been negative news as far as the reef, but it actually brought our people together, and we're at the table now. So it is making a big difference, it really is. So I'd like to thank the organisations and all the people for that, because I do believe it is empowering our people. But I am going to give you a challenge. Basically, through the process I work with, as far as working with the traditional owners, we have the free, prior and informed consent, and the way we operate is that we sort of make sure that they have all the information and the process of what's going to happen on their country and get their permission for yes or no, or seek their consent. I'd like to challenge every organisation to look at something very similar and try to change the way you engage with traditional owners and be more meaningful in the way that it's done, and hopefully look at this FPIC process. And also I think what we've been finding is that with the AIMS engagement, it's a breath of fresh air for the traditional owners in a different way. And we've had other organisations approach those traditional owners, and the traditional owners have told them, no, go back to AIMS and learn how to do it properly, basically as far as the Indigenous engagement goes. So it is making a difference, and we are making a difference in AIMS, and the traditional owners are taking that on board. So other organisations walking through the door are going to be challenged like that. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. We have another question over here.
Thank you very much. Phil Laycock, Cairns Port Douglas Reef Hub. We've heard much about scaling and the need to scale, and it's going to be very at the centre of the future of our Great Barrier Reef. We've heard much about the wonderful leaps forward in including traditional owners as central partners in this process as well. I want to ask the panel about how we should, prioritise the site-based intervention work that's been done over the last 8 to 10 years in particular, I guess, whether it be a site-based intervention on Bob's country, coral nurture, Mars reef stars, all of those sorts of things. Where should we be prioritising those in our strategic planning when we're thinking about, expanding on scale? I just share a brief thought about that myself. I mean, it's these areas that are generally most accessible to our community, to our cultural partners as well. So the value of being able to access these sites and seeing these things really, the benefits of this kind of scalable aspiration we have, I feel is really important. But I do sense that in some conversations that are being had, scale is being put there as really the thing that we need to focus on completely. I just think there's going to be some significant value in maintaining a lot of the site-based wins that we've had to ensure we bring the community, the public along with us. Thank you.
Anybody want to make a comment on that? We'll start with Selina.
Okay,
very
that's
quick.
yeah, very
Austin,
quick.
Very quick. 1
Okay.
minute. We've got a few
Yeah,
minutes, and we'll get.
the scaling is very important, but what we're looking at is the way you scale is through communities, through tourism industry, through Indigenous communities, and we have to empower them, and we have to make sure that they're well managed and so forth, and educated as a process. But when you scale, we also have to involve the corals and the fish. If we want to scale using the natural recovery process, we need to start looking at natural processes. We don't know enough yet. This is so new that we're all talking about numbers and numbers, but it needs to be based upon more ecological data that we don't have yet. So this thing of if you plant 10 corals in a patch, and bigger corals and 10 big corals in a patch versus 10,000 smaller corals all over the place.
Thanks.
We need to know the effective
Austin,
way.
we need to share the time too. So, Selina?
I completely agree about you need site-specific because you need a range of scales and spatio-temporal studies. The power in site-specific and communities, that's seeing is believing. And once you get demonstration, a small scale, then that can be really empowering and expanded. So you need a combination from my experience.
Yeah, I was going to echo that and just really reiterate your seeing is believing. I had the privilege to go to the International Coral Reef Initiative meeting last November, I think it was, in Hawaii, and Greg Asner from the University of Arizona was in the process of building a joint sort of sexual and asexual reproduction coral hub for communities. And we took the whole of the ICRI panel out, and so basically representing 42 different countries with all different levels of government officials there, and actually seeing a structure, seeing a facility, understanding the number of people that just said, I get it, and I get that actually scale can mean replicating these smaller facilities that can be led by traditional owners and community groups, and I get it, and actually I know exactly which plot of land I can put that on. So it changed the whole conversation from this is out of the realms of possibility, I don't understand what our role could be, to just being there, and it was only half built at the time, and the ribbon cutting I think is the week after next. But it was really, really powerful. So we have to have those showcase demonstration sites that are accessible and provide that education and make what feels quite intractable, tractable.
15 seconds. 15. Yeah. Just echoing that, it's prioritising has to be based on data, and demonstration sites and seeing is important, but when we're looking in the long-term strategy, it's where in the ecosystem that we can also work with. So it's got to be based on that ecological data, and then access then comes part of that, because we may never be able to get there, but so it has to be a way up. But for me, overall, it has to be based on that data to understand it.
The only thing I'd add to that, getting back to the GBR, I think we've got I'd sort of step further back. I think we have clarity about objective. I mean, there's a number of reasons why you might want to intervene or restore. It could be a economic objective. It could be a resilient reef objective. It could be a traditional owner objectives in their countries. It could have been, a whole of reef objective where, which we only have one intervention at the moment, that's Crown of Thorns control. So, I mean, I think there's that getting clarity about why you're doing it, and that also helps clarity about where you're doing it, so it's the where and why. Then I think in terms of that scale question, I mean, you've got to be really careful here, because I think there's that process of demonstration at one level, which some of it is innovation, some of it is, some of it is research, some of it is operational at that, say a reef site. But then, it's the next step of piloting up to, would it work at bigger scales? Would it even work? And then if that does, if you want to go to implementation and operation, that's that's not a research question. That's about how do you maintain, this as a management tool and a management objective, both in terms of on-water activity, but also in terms of what I call the backroom activity, and that's be it the research, be it the opportunities for continuous improvement, be it being aware there may be some steps in terms of significant improvements at a particular moment. So I think it's really, as well as I agree with what's here, but it's really clarity of objectives of why you're doing it. And you will do these things for very different reasons in different places.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I timed you then, Gareth. That was 24 seconds, not 15, but still quite
The people
good.
who know me, that's the shortest I've ever spoken.
Well done.
No, congratulate him.
That's right, well done, yes. So please join us in thanking the panel for speaking today. A quick update from me about tomorrow morning. So we're commencing here at 8:30 again tomorrow with a plenary from Justine Bell-James from UQ, talking about restoration at scale, legal barriers and enablers. And then we'll have a session with some talks led by our traditional owners. So really looking forward to those talks as well. A few talks in that session. For some of us today, your work here is done, so you're free to go and enjoy your evening. For some of us, we have a small-scale networking event that is held at the Chambers. It's close by. I have a map. So we will exit the venue and go across the pedestrian crossing out that way. We turn right and then left. It's on the corner of Lake and Spence Street, about 2 minutes walk away. Follow me. I have a map. Thank you so much for today, everyone. It's been a fantastic day. Thank you.